Okay, this is maybe a weird one, but just stick with me. I don't do a lot of readings because I narrate my own audiobooks, so everybody already knows what I sound like if they're interested in finding out. But I released Shortchanged about 6 months ago, and there's something in the author's note that is important enough to me that I felt like it needed to be shared more widely. I know not everybody reads the short stories. This is like integrated in the main series, but I know short stories aren't everybody's jam, so I totally understand if it's something that you skipped. But it's important enough to me that I wanted to make sure that this part of it, at least, was shared as widely as possible. It's kind of a statement on my personal creative philosophy and how it intersects with the real world. And honestly, kind of who I'm trying to be as a person in general. And so whether or not you've read the stories or read just the series or don't have any idea who I am and have just stumbled across this video randomly for some other reason, I felt like I wanted to share this part of the author's note. That way we're on the same page about who I am and what my intentions are. So, if you don't mind, or even if you do, I'm going to do a reading from the author's note from about a third of the way through. And while I have you, I want to talk about a serious thing that applies to everything I write. But maybe these stories especially. You can skip the rest of this intro if you're not in the mood, but I want to say it somewhere, and this is as good a place as any. You should also know that I went through about 30 different drafts of this next part before I got here, and I still don't think it's quite right. But it is the best I've got. So if I screwed it up, I hope you'll forgive me. This series has a big cast, and it's only getting bigger, but I feel like I can usually nail the perspective of Gabe pretty well. For some reason, I have no problem at all capturing the angle of an overthinking smartass whose main talent is pretending to know what he's doing. Let's not dwell on why that is. But other perspectives can be a challenge when there are an infinite number of life experiences I will never personally live. It's a primary goal of mine to write respectfully for a cast that is as big and diverse and fascinating as I can manage, but that also means being constantly aware of any mental blind spots when it comes to the characters I may not identify with as readily. These are the people walking on stage in my brain, but stereotypes and caricatures and well-meaning but bumbling representations can and do happen, and they're bad for everyone, all the time. So there's always a balance to maintain while I try to keep things fun and give my books more to offer than just cool swords and monsters and stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have a perfect answer for how to consistently walk that line. I'm still learning, just like we all are. But try as I might, I know I will never truly be able to understand every aspect of where some of my characters are coming from. I will only ever be a tourist in many parts of their worlds. They have experiences and problems and gifts that I will never be able to represent completely from my single point of view, but I also can't just glide over those complicated bits because I'm too much of a coward to try to approach them. Every theme that resonates with us as readers only does so because it has an analog in the real world. And I have to believe that those real ideas should have a place in the art we consume. They belong in the light, and the more people shining it, the better. Because we are all different. And understanding for one another doesn't happen passively. It's a process that requires our participation beyond intent. We are all visitors somewhere. But the only way to actively expand the borders of our individual realities is to travel outside them, to go to those other places so we can listen and learn. Seclusion may be safer, sure, but it leads nowhere. And worse, it's freaking boring. My job is to tell a good story. But good has a bunch of layers to it. In my case, I want this series to include glimmers from every facet of the myriad perspectives that make life in the real world so cool. I don't want to just ransack a legend or an identity for the best bits and then wander blithely away. I always try to consider what makes those elements special and important, even if it does just end up being part of a joke. Because life should be fun, otherwise, what are we doing? And at the same time, I don't want to damage anyone's actual reality in the process of cultivating that dynamic. Ever. Because while I may be earnestly trying to expand my universe with every new character, I can't possibly predict how the themes of their lives may intersect with yours. How my words might delight or hurt you. And the depth of my plot is no justification to trample over your path, no matter how good my intentions may be. Yes, it would be way easier to just pare down all my characters until they were shallow, uncomplicated mannequins, sanitized of all controversy and purely there to deliver snappy dialogue and move the scenery around, but I just can't. They deserve better, and so do you. I don't know. Maybe I'm taking myself and these books way too seriously. That's up to you, I guess. But every time I get a message or review from someone who loves this series, who genuinely connected to it, I do take that incredibly seriously. Because I want everyone reading this to find a place to connect to, which means I can't just offer my one narrow perspective. No matter who you are or what you've brought in, I want you to have a home here, regardless of how deftly or clumsily I may construct it. I'm here to do my best to tell a story that can be fun on the surface and still manage to have depth to explore. To capture a little magic for us to share together in the hope of imparting some joy or meaning to last longer than the pages. Even when it's a challenge. Even when I have no idea what I'm doing, or I'm nervous about stepping over my borders. So, if any part of anything I write ever rubs you the wrong way, in these books or otherwise, please know that it was intended in the utmost spirit of love and respect. If I ever screw up a character or cultural reference or someone's voice in the audiobook, I promise it will never be out of malice or laziness. It might just be genuine incompetence. And which is never an easy thing to admit, but maybe the world would be a much better place if more people did. And in the end, all of this rambling is probably what makes Ethereal Earth what it is. It will always be about not quite belonging, but wanting to and trying. About peering through the glamours into other worlds and doing our best to appreciate what we find there. About learning a little more every day and accepting that each answer may unlock 2 new questions that lead us farther from the paths we thought we wanted. And ultimately, it's about letting people become every ounce of who they authentically are, without shackling them to the weight of our preconceptions. So that the bridges we all create in our individual flourishing might someday connect and expand the world in ways we never dreamed. And yeah, also about cool swords and monsters and stuff. Thanks for listening, and I hope you like the stories.